All right, thank you everybody. Welcome to the opening of the, we call it M6, it's M6, whatever we're going to be calling it, but welcome today and thank you for coming along. I've been given the task of just welcoming everyone today because I'm probably the oldest one here, so and I can remember the time when we used to talk about the corridor. So the corridor's been set aside now for about 72 years, so as I've turned 60, I'm the closest to the age of the corridor. So I welcome this announcement today. It's long awaited and it's fantastic. We're kicking on and getting it done. So I'll hand it over to the Premier.
Thank you, Lee. It's great to be here with the Transport Minister today, Rob Stokes, local members, Lee Evans, Mark Perrottet and Eleni Petnos, over this very important milestone. So today I'll make a few comments in relation to this project, the M6, as it gets underway, and also a bit of a COVID update as well, and then we'll take all of your questions. But today is a very important milestone for our state. We are building $108 billion of infrastructure over the next 4 years. These projects are incredibly important in driving economic growth and jobs growth. On this project alone, 5,500 jobs. It will ensure that over 20 sets of traffic lights are bypassed. It returns residential roads to residential people. This is what these projects do. They allow people to get home to their families faster right across the state. We continue to build the public transport and the road networks that will take our state from good to great. They are transforming New South Wales before our very eyes. There are more cranes over the skies in Sydney and our state than arguably anywhere else in the world. We started this journey in relation to building infrastructure many years ago. All these projects that have sat in the too hard basket for decades are now getting underway. These road networks are transforming our state, allowing people to get home to their families faster, ensuring heavy vehicles are taken off roads, 10,000 vehicles a day off General Holmes Drive. These ensures that not only are we building the big infrastructure, but those residential roads, suburban roads, are returned to the suburbs. That's what these projects do. We've seen that all across the state. For many years, whether it's projects like the M2 that were under the previous Labor government were opposed, built by this government, WestConnex project as well. All of these projects will make a real difference to people's lives, and we're just getting on with the job, driving the New South Wales economy. And we know in what's been a very challenging 18 months here in our state, that what has been the foundation stone that has kept our economy moving, have kept people in work, has been our public investment in critical infrastructure that will transform our state and take it from good to great. So it's great to be here with the Transport Minister today. He's got a big job ahead of him as we continue to build these road networks, which will make a real difference to people's lives. Now, in relation to the Omicron variant, a few comments in relation to that. We continue to take a precautionary approach. We're working very closely with the Commonwealth Government. I was speaking to the Prime Minister this morning. We're having a national cabinet in relation to developments, I think tomorrow or later today. And in addition to that, we work very closely with the Victorian Premier Dan Andrews. We've obviously put in place a 72-hour isolation for people who are overseas travellers coming into Australia. Over the last 24 hours, we had 141 people from those 9 affected countries come in. There are 2, possibly 3 positive cases. Those 141 travellers on 5 flights over the last 24 hours are in our health quarantine facility. But ultimately, as I said yesterday, we don't just need to learn to live alongside COVID, we need to learn to live alongside the variants as well. And we're very confident based on our high vaccination rate. I said yesterday, and I'll say it again, vaccination is key to New South Wales being able to continue to open up safely. For everybody across New South Wales who have made that effort, can I thank you? Close to 95% of people have received their first dose vaccination. That is incredibly important. And in addition to that, our booster shot program is up and running as well. And I just want to, my key message today is for those people across the state where it's been 6 months since your second dose vaccination, please go out and get a booster shot. That That program is well underway. You can receive a booster shot either at our Homebush Centre, our Granville Centre, through your GP, through your pharmacist. The pandemic is not over, but we need to continue to open up our state, open up our economy, keep people back into work. There are many challenges that are in front of us, but I believe the key to success here has been our high vaccination rate, but also to remember that if you are eligible for a booster shot, please go out and get one. That is the best way of protecting you and your family as we move through this difficult journey. We've come through a lot over the last 18 months. We've got through that. We're going to get through this, and it's going to be a very bright summer. Now I'm going to pass to Robert Stokes, Transport Minister, who will make some comments about the importance of this project to the people of our state.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Dominic Perrottet, the Premier of New South Wales, and the local members who represent the southern part of Sydney to announce the start of a project that's been a long time in the making. The County of Cumberland scheme that was gazetted back in 1951 locates this corridor as the M6, and it is wonderful that we are now the government that gets to deliver on that long-awaited commitment to the people of southern Sydney. That same map that indicated the route of the West Connects, the North Connects, the Northwest Metro, and also this important corridor has been a blueprint for this government to deliver the projects that other governments have only talked about. As the Premier has articulated, this is a congestion-busting project. More than 20 sets of traffic lights will be avoided. It'll significantly increase savings in terms of travel times between places like Cogra or Tarrant Point through to Mascot and the city and beyond. The 4 kilometres of twin tunnels will start literally under our feet and go all the way to Arncliffe. And there's an exciting dividend for local residents around Rockdale and Cogra as well. Some new great playing fields as well as active transport networks, pedestrian pathways, bike pathways, and the opportunity for along General Holmes Drive to return that area more to the community and to create more of a vibe throughout places like Brighton Les Sands by taking around 10,000 vehicles off the roads. And again, as the Premier has articulated, there's also the opportunity to provide 5,500 jobs through this project over coming years, and we look forward to it being completed by the end of 2025. And another great initiative that this government is able to deliver to make life that little bit easier for people from southern Sydney. Thanks.
Questions?
Premier, some visa categories were due to be freed up in the coming days, more people coming in on a variety of visas. What's going to happen?
I've spoken obviously to the Prime Minister this morning in relation to that. They're working through those details, and I think what's most important here is we continue our precautionary approach. The Victorian and New South Wales governments, who are mostly affected by this new strain, are working very closely together for a coordinated approach. The Prime Minister is looking at those issues in relation to visa holders, and my understanding is, particularly I think on the 1st of December is the date where some of those changes are due to be made. He will obviously, in consultation with the states, make some decisions in relation to that.
But this is a national cabinet process, so you'll have a say in it. What would be your recommendation?
Well, I think that's too early to tell. I mean, we'll work through and get the advice from Commonwealth officials as well as our state health officials. We've put obviously some preliminary provisions in place to ensure that those people who are coming from those 9 southern African nations are in health quarantine for this period. As we obtain some further information for other returning Australians, we've said, or returning travellers, we've put in 72 hours of isolation. We think that is the right approach, proportionate approach at this stage. Ultimately, though, we need to open up to the world. We need to do so safely. We don't need to have a knee-jerk reaction. We need to have a proportionate and balanced response to the situation that's in front of us as our health officials obtain more information, both at a state and Commonwealth level. Ultimately, our aim, our #1 priority, is to keep our people safe. That's what we've done over the last 18 months, and that's what we'll do over the next 12 months as we move through the next phase of this pandemic. But we want to keep people safe. That's exactly the goal of the New South Wales government. It's what we've done over the last 12 months. We've always said as well that as we do open up, not just domestically but internationally, case numbers will increase. The measure of success, though, is not case numbers. The measure of success is keeping people out of hospital, keeping people safe, and at the same time opening up the economy to keep people in work and to keep businesses open. That's the balance we've had in the past, and that's the balance we will have as we move through the next phase of the pandemic.
So what do you think is the point that if the borders don't open to visa hoppers?
No, not at all. What is most important is that we keep people safe, and that we open up as quickly as possible, but as safely as possible. That is the focus of the New South Wales government, and that is the focus of the Commonwealth government. And working very closely together, I think particularly the two affected states here are Victoria and New South Wales. Numerous discussions with the Victorian Premier, Dan Andrews. We'll continue those discussions moving forward as further information comes to light. But ultimately, we've got to learn to live alongside the virus. We've got to learn to live alongside the variants of the virus that come our way, and we'll gain that information. The vaccination rate here is one of the highest in the world. That is not the case in the Southern African nations. And what this clearly demonstrates, as we have said to the people of New South Wales throughout this entire pandemic, going out and getting vaccinated, receiving those booster shots, keeps you and your family safe, and the efforts that everyone across New South Wales has made has enabled us to open up as quickly as possible. In addition to that, we want to rejoin the world. There are major challenges facing our state. There are labour shortages across New South Wales. There are many families, there are many businesses that rely on and survive on international tourism, international borders being open to survive, to employ people, and the balance we've had in the past is the balance that we're going to take going forward.
There are a lot of fears on what this will do to travel and holiday plans this summer and next year. How confident are you that will be able to stay open?
But I'm very confident that we'll continue to deal with every single challenge that comes our way. There are always going to be different variants of the virus. We have been saying that from the outset. There will always be different challenges that come our way during the pandemic. What is most important is that as a government, we assess the situation, we understand the health impacts, and we make the decisions accordingly that are in the best interest of the people of New South Wales.
Is a reintroduction of hotel quarantine on the cards?
No. Well, what any good government does is look at all the options available to us and prepare and make sure that the state is prepared for challenges that come our way. And if challenges come our way and circumstances change, which may result in a situation from a health perspective that there is a concern in relation to an increase in hospitalisations, we've always said that we will tailor our restrictions from time to time if necessary. That is completely in line with the federal roadmap. That is the measured approach that any state should take. And as we have opened up, we've been very clear that we do not want to go back into lockdown. We want to provide confidence to the business community. We want to provide confidence to people right across our state that they can continue to invest, that they can continue to stay open, that we can continue to keep people in work. That is the approach that the New South Wales government has taken. This is a health pandemic. There are health issues. There are economic issues. There are mental health challenges, and they will continue as we move forward. What is most important is our number one priority is to keep people safe and to keep businesses open and to keep people in work. And that's exactly what we've done over the last 18 months. That's exactly what we will do going forward. There will be, from time to time, as we have seen, new variants. When there are new variants, the response should not be, let's shut down. The response from this government and other governments is, let's understand the situation, let's assess the health impacts and make a decision once that information comes to light. And what we have done is put measures in place over the next, well, we said for 72 hours and obviously 14 days quarantine in our health facility for those people who come in from those Southern African nations. We know that is an impediment. We know that an inconvenience. That's an inconvenience for many of those travellers coming into Australia. But until we get further information, it is the appropriate response to take. Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. We've tried as much as possible to move the thinking away from increasing case numbers is a problem in of itself. We have always said from the outset that as we open up domestically, as we open up internationally, case numbers will increase. Case numbers increasing in of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. We need to learn to live alongside the virus. We need to learn to live alongside the variants of the virus. Vaccination is key to keeping people safe. What we do measure, and what is incredibly important, is that we monitor and keep as low as possible hospitalisations, ICU presentations and deaths. That is the focus of the New South Wales government. That is the focus as we move through this pandemic. The alternative to that is to shut down, lock down at every point in time. That is not a tenable response. But what we will do is tailor our restrictions, as we've always said, from time to time. If we do believe that there are concerns affecting the health and safety of the people of New South Wales, we will act accordingly.
You've said previously that you would like.
Well, we've always said as we've opened up domestically, and the same principle applies, and that is in certain areas of the state, if there are an increase in case numbers leading to an increased hospitalisation numbers, then we might need to tailor restrictions from time to time. They could be in relation to face masks or other matters, but it's not. We shouldn't preempt that. What we should do in a measured and responsible way is assess the information that's in front of us and act in a proportionate way. That is exactly what the state has done to date, and that's what we'll continue to do going forward.
You've said previously that you would like a One Australia approach to this
Yes.
variant. Do you expect the other states to follow that, and is that something you'd like to push in National Cabinet today?
Well, I think that's the appropriate approach to take, and where possible, if we can seek alignment between the states and territories, I believe that's in the best interest of the country. Now, we're working very closely. As I said, I've had numerous discussions with Premier Dan Andrews of Victoria. Clearly, New South Wales and Victoria are the two mainly affected states, particularly in relation to international travel and quarantine. So we'll work closely together. If the states can have a harmonious, aligned response, I think that's best. And to date, I think the constructive discussions between the Victorian government and the Commonwealth government have set us down that path.
Well, we can see it. It's going to be like a deck of cards. It's just dominoes just falling with the state borders closed. What do you say to people who've got their heart set on going to Queensland or potentially even South Australia and other states and territories for Christmas and have maybe even family and friends coming from overseas?
Well, I hope we don't see that occur. I mean,
But it will happen, won't it?
Well, we've seen that the borders are closed, Chris, at the moment, and what's very pleasing, not just in New South Wales, but right across the country, has been that vaccination rate. Now, other states have been slower off the mark when it comes to reaching the high vaccination rates that we've seen here in New South Wales. They need to make the decisions that are in the best interest of their people, the best interest of their state, keeping whether it's people in Western Australia, South Australia, Tasmania, they need to keep their people safe. And the best way of doing that is ensuring that the vaccination rate increases in their relevant jurisdictions. Now, they've put various measures in place to help drive that. I think that's already having strong results, and hopefully if that can continue, there won't need to be any change in relation to state borders. We should be one nation, not a divided set of penal colonies.
Premier, on another topic, authorities believe more than $1 billion has been laundered through poker machines and pubs and clubs. Is it time to actually do something to stop this?
Well, the New South Wales government has zero tolerance for organised crime. We have zero tolerance for money laundering, and if we need to do more, we will. Obviously, the reports that we saw last night were very concerning, and I'll be getting a briefing in relation to those matters today. And if there's further action the New South Wales government should take, we obviously will take.
Your minister responsible for hotel quarantines, Stuart Ayres, yesterday said that the state was willing we will take necessary measures, including restarting quarantine if required.
Yeah.
Are you guys on the same page? And secondly, would you first pull the trigger on home quarantine for international arrivals before hotel?
Yeah, we're completely on the same page. And that is, any good government would ensure that measures are in place, precautionary measures, so that if circumstances were to change, the government is ready and able to increase settings and put in restrictions that are needed in circumstances where we believe there are challenges for people's health and welfare. That is Stuart Ayres is doing exactly what any responsible minister would do. And he did mention there quarantine. He's not talking about hotel quarantine. He's mentioned specifically quarantine. We put measures in place for home isolation for the next 72 hours. And it's only appropriate that he would take that action.
On the pokies, it was the media that revealed what was utterly toxic and unacceptable in the casinos, both with Crown and with Star. It's the media again that's pushing it with the help of whistleblowers who've been gagged by the courts. It's not good enough, is it, when governments, which we know take hellish amounts of money from the gambling industry on both sides of the aisle, to sit there and say, well, if there's something to be done, it needs to be done, and leave it to the media to find out about it? I mean, aren't you asleep at the wheel, or worse, when this can go on and you seem insensible to the fact it's been going on for years?
Well, Hugh, that's incorrect. The government takes this situation incredibly seriously. We've launched a Bergen inquiry in relation to money laundering, particularly
after the media.
Well, the media. Well, as you know, Hugh, the media play a very important role. That is, the government takes proactive steps in this space. There are provisions in place in relation to the monitoring of pokie machines in pubs and in clubs. Any view that somehow the government is compromised because it receives gaming revenue, I reject out of hand. The government takes these situations and revelations like this very seriously. The media, though, play an important role. That's the investigative journalism. Whilst it's fallen away this example for some time, this is a great example of the great role that investigative journalism can play in exposing challenges and issues facing our state. And I welcome it. I welcome the role the media plays. I don't dismiss it. I think it's revelations like this are important to be exposed. The media plays a role in that, and the government responds. It's not unusual the government responds off the back of strong media investigations from time to time. We will certainly look at this, and if there is action that needs to be taken by the state government, we will certainly take the appropriate action.
Can I ask on toll roads? Is this tolled? What is the toll? And are you looking more broadly at changing the regime across Sydney?
Well, $2.20 is the toll each way, and look, we know that cost of living, Chris, is a challenge for families right across our state. Having said that, we need to keep building the roads and the public transport to make a real difference to people's lives, and we will continue to do that. We are looking at those issues at the moment. Where we can put downward pressure on the system, we will. We need to do it in an appropriate way. An important trigger for that is obviously the construction of the Western Harbour Tunnel and the implications of that on the broader road network, and we're focused on that. So we'll work through those challenges. I think it's important that we have, we've said in the past, continue to keep this position, that you need to provide, when you're building these major motorways, you need to provide for alternatives. And it's just like the West Connects. The West Connects and the opportunity that provides to the families of Western Sydney also allows roads like Parramatta Road to flow faster. If we hadn't built the M2, and let's not forget, when we announced the M2, when Bruce Baird was the Transport Minister and was censured in the House, almost censured in the House, in what was a hung parliament at the time, the Labor Party called the Northwest the road to nowhere. No one know what they said at the time. No one's ever going to live in Northwest Sydney. That is the lack of foresight and vision. Could you imagine today if the people of Northwest Sydney were crawling into town on Epping Road? That is the consequence of a government saying, we're putting it all into too hard basket. We're not going to build these roads because there are challenges to do it. Well, that is not our government. We will build these roads. If you don't want to use these roads, you can use the ancillary roads that run alongside
On
it,
that,
and
have
they
you
will
been
flow faster as
Have
well.
you been to Stony Creek Road up at Bexley? Because the trucks
No, I
that are
understand
going
that.
to the airport,
Yeah.
the port, it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
we're aware of that issue, and we'll continue to work through it. That is something that can be looked at as part of the broader framework in terms of the network, and there are always going to be challenges from time to time. We've seen the benefits of, particularly like with North Connects, and as somebody who lives in that area, Pennant Hills Road, the impact that taking trucks onto motorways like North Connects have made a substantial difference. That North Connects tunnel, which has not really got the coverage it deserves, is a fantastic piece of infrastructure that not only allows people to get up from the Central Coast up down to Sydney faster, into the city, out to the western suburbs faster, but it's also had a significant impact of alleviating congestion on Pennant Hills Road. It's turned Pennant Hills Road into a tourist attraction in its own right, from Pierce's Corner to Thompson's Corner, and for parents driving their kids to school. In the past has been an incredible challenge navigating and negotiating with traffic on that road. Those roads, that tunnel has made a substantial difference. So we'll continue to get on with the job. We know from time to time when we're building infrastructure, and a lot of it, $108 billion over the next 4 years, there'll be problems. I accept that, but the alternative is to do nothing. That's what occurred in the past. That is not our government. We're building a brighter future for our state, and we're going to keep going.
Premier, can you
Just last one on North Connects. I mean, you referenced that as the trucks. That only works because you're forcing on.
Yeah.
Would you consider doing the same to alleviate?
I'm not going.
pressure on Stony
Yeah,
Creek Road?
thanks, Tom. Look, what I will say in relation to that is we will look at those issues along the entire network as we move through this period. As I said, Western Harbour Tunnel and the challenge in Western Harbour Tunnel, the unique nature of that issue allows us to look at the network as a whole, and that's what we'll be doing.
Premier, can you guarantee that the International Student Pilot Program will go ahead next Monday? It's your program, regardless of what the federal government decides, and it'll be hotel quarantine free?
Well, that's our intention. That is the intention of the government, but ultimately we don't control the international borders. But that is our intention, yes.
The alleged gunman from Windang yesterday is believed to be mentally ill. Are you concerned that he had access to a firearms licence and easy access to a gun?
Well, yes, I am concerned, and I'll be speaking to the police minister in relation to that matter.
Did New South Wales Health recommend that all travellers from overseas should go into 2-week quarantine, or did they recommend
New South Wales Health provides frank advice in relation to their overall setting. We sit down and we work through all of those issues, and have reached a position that we believe is very reasonable, and the position the government has taken is in line with the health advice that we received.
Minister
Have you had an
Stokes?
update on the floods, and what's your advice to those communities
Yeah.
that are isolated today?
Well, obviously I was out in Bass Hill yesterday with the Emergency Services Minister and the Commissioner of the State Emergency Services. There are many challenges in relation to this facing our state at the moment. There has been over 30 rescues. That is in the last 24 hours, I believe. That is way too many, and that's why my clear message to people across the state who are in flood-prone communities who are affected: please follow the advice. Please follow the instructions that you've received. We have over 400 state emergency services volunteers on the ground across our state. They are putting their lives at risk to protect you and your families. Please follow those instructions. Please don't drive through floodwaters, and please look after yourselves and look after your families. And if you follow those instructions, you'll ensure that you stay safe and your family stays safe.
Minister Stokes, the Manly ferries have failed their testing in swell conditions, and how embarrassing is this for your government?
Well, that's incorrect. The test was unable to be concluded because the swell conditions didn't last for long enough. So it wasn't a matter of how the ferries performed in those tests, but rather the tests could not continue because the swell conditions didn't last.
A window shattered and the rudder almost fell off the ferry. Like, they're not going too well, are they?
So I've been briefed on this specifically by the Chief Operating Officer for Transport for New South Wales this morning, and on those two incidents you raise, first in relation to the broken window, I'm advised that had nothing to do with the swell conditions. That was the first piece of advice. And the second thing was that there was a nut that became loose on the thread of its screw, or of its bolt rather, and they're going to put a split pin on the end of the bolt to ensure that doesn't happen in the future. We're talking about a loose nut here.
Just generally though, I mean the ferries concerned the river class not being able to go under the bridges, asbestos found in them, the glare issues at night, now the Manly ferries having these issues in bigger swell. This overseas procurement that's been undertaken, are you regretting that?
Well, first, a couple of things to put here. These ferries, in both instances, were designed by locals, by a great Australian company that was designed specifically for Australian conditions. In relation to the issue of the bridges, well, the ferries have never been able to have passengers on top of the roof as they've gone under these bridges. So it wasn't a case of the design of the ferry, but rather the height of the bridge. And in relation to the Manly ferry, well, I've answered those questions.
Regarding correct the drivers named the failed details?
I haven't been very specific on that issue.
Minister, regarding the M6, is there any chance the whole project will actually be finished in our lifetime? Every one of your MPs there, it was all before they were born, it was first mooted.
Well, you'd be pleased to know that they've been actually lobbying on the walk over here for us to get on with the next stage. Obviously, this commitment relates to the start of stage 1 of the M6, but we have invested significant funds in doing the business case for the next stage down to Loftus. That will enable government to make an investment decision in due course, but until that business case is completed, we won't know the answer to that question. But certainly, we look at a pipeline of projects, and that's why we've demonstrated across Sydney our capacity to build these roads that are identified as necessary, and this is the first stage in the M6, and it is our intention to look at what we can do to fulfil that original promise made some 70 years ago.
So 2025 and the budget's the same for stage 1?
Yes, so the budget is locked in for stage 1. As I've indicated, in relation to future stages, that business case work is underway, and that'll be able to inform future investment decisions.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.